Control your thug dog before I put it down myself. Officer Wade Barlow's boot slammed into Titan's ribs with a hard, ugly thud that echoed across the harbor walkway. The German shepherd yelped and dropped to the pavement, but even in pain he obeyed the command Malcolm Vance had given him: heel, stay, don't move. Barlow sneered, leaning closer, the bitter smell of coffee on his breath. You people always say the mutt's trained right before it attacks. A few pedestrians slowed nearby, watching quietly but keeping their distance. Malcolm's worn sneakers stayed planted as he knelt beside Titan. One steady hand pressed to the dog's side, his voice calm despite the heat rising in his chest. Barlow saw that silence and mistook it for weakness. He had no idea the man he'd just humiliated wasn't some random civilian. He'd just assaulted an off-duty FBI agent. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun sparkled across the harbor waters as Malcolm Vance walked along the promenade, enjoying the gentle breeze and peaceful atmosphere after a satisfying brunch at his mother's house. Titan, his German shepherd, padded silently beside him, matching his pace perfectly. The dog's leash hung loose between them, more a formality than a necessity given Titan's impeccable training. Malcolm observed the weekend crowd: joggers, families with strollers, elderly couples on their morning walks. The neighborhood had changed over the years, with new condos and boutique shops replacing the familiar old storefronts. Still, this walk was their Saturday ritual, a moment of calm before the rest of the day began. The peace shattered when Malcolm noticed a patrol car creeping along the street parallel to the walkway. The officer inside was studying them with obvious intent, and Malcolm felt the familiar tension creep into his shoulders. He kept his pace steady and expression neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. The patrol car pulled to a stop, and Officer Wade Barlow stepped out, his hand already resting near his hip. Malcolm noticed how the officer's eyes locked onto Titan, ignoring Malcolm completely at first. "Sir, that dog looks aggressive," Barlow called out, his voice carrying across the promenade. "You need to control your animal." Malcolm took a slow breath. Titan sat perfectly at his heel, calm and attentive. "Officer, my dog is under complete control. He's trained and properly leashed." Several people stopped to watch the interaction. Phones appeared in hands, recording what was unfolding. Barlow stepped closer, his boots scraping against the concrete. "I said, control your animal." Barlow's voice rose sharply. "Get that dog on a shorter leash right now." Malcolm kept his voice level, though his heart rate picked up. "Sir, the leash is at a proper length. Titan is sitting calmly and showing no aggression." "Don't tell me how to do my job," Barlow snapped, color rising in his face. "That dog was lunging at pedestrians. I saw it myself." This was a bare-faced lie, and the growing crowd knew it. Malcolm heard murmurs of disagreement from onlookers. Titan hadn't moved a muscle, his ears forward but relaxed, showing no signs of stress or aggression. "Officer Barlow," Malcolm said, reading the nameplate, "I respect your concern for public safety, but my dog has not lunged at anyone. These people here can verify that." Barlow's face twisted with anger at being challenged, even politely. "Put that dog on the ground now, on its belly." "That command would actually make him more likely to feel threatened," Malcolm explained calmly, drawing on years of dog handling experience. "He's already in a controlled sitting position." "You refusing to comply with an officer's orders?" Barlow stepped closer, his hand now openly resting on his weapon. The move was deliberately intimidating, and Malcolm recognized it for what it was: not procedure, but provocation. The crowd had grown larger. Malcolm could feel dozens of eyes on them, hear the whispers and the concern in people's voices. Some had phones raised, documenting everything. Titan remained perfectly still, proving with every passing second how false Barlow's claims were. "Down on the ground!" Barlow shouted, spit flying from his lips. "Both of you, now!" Malcolm kept his hands visible and his voice steady. "Officer, I'm going to stay standing, and my dog will stay sitting. We are not a threat to anyone, and you know that." "You people always think you know better," Barlow snarled, the mask of professionalism slipping completely. "Always got to argue, always got to make things difficult." The racial undertone was clear as day. Malcolm saw faces in the crowd register it, saw phones angle higher to catch every word. He remained still, knowing any movement could be twisted into an excuse for violence. "My dog and I are simply taking our morning walk," Malcolm said. "There's no need for this to escalate." Barlow's face flushed darker. His authority was being challenged not by Malcolm's words, but by his composure. The officer stepped even closer, trying to force Malcolm to step back, to show submission or fear. Malcolm held his ground. Titan stayed perfectly positioned at his heel, head high, disciplined and calm despite the officer's aggressive posture. "Last warning!" Barlow growled, now close enough that Malcolm could smell coffee on his breath. "Get that aggressive animal under control, or—" "He is under control," Malcolm said quietly. "He's been under control this entire time." The truth of those words, supported by Titan's steady presence and the crowd's watchful attention, seemed to snap something in Barlow. His face contorted with rage at being made to look foolish, at his authority being undermined by simple facts. Without warning, Barlow's boot shot out in a vicious arc, connecting solidly with Titan's ribcage. Titan's pained yelp pierced the morning air. The German Shepherd crumpled sideways onto the sun-warmed concrete, his powerful body curling inward from the brutal impact. Malcolm instantly dropped to one knee beside his dog, his hands moving carefully over Titan's ribs to assess the damage. "Stay down!" Barlow bellowed, his face red with anger. "Both of you stay right where you are." Malcolm kept his focus on Titan, whose dark eyes locked onto his face, waiting for guidance despite the pain. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "Stay still. Get your hands where I can see them." Barlow advanced, his boots scraping against the pavement. "Step away from the dog now." "I need to check if he's injured," Malcolm said evenly, not moving from his protective position. Barlow grabbed Malcolm's shoulder, yanking him backward. "I said get up! That's an aggressive animal, and you're interfering with police business." The crowd had grown larger, forming a loose circle around them. Phones recorded from every angle, capturing Barlow's escalating behavior. Several voices called out in protest. "The dog wasn't doing anything wrong. That officer just attacked them. Someone call for help." Barlow spun toward the voices. "Everyone stay back. This is a police matter." Malcolm remained focused and controlled, even as Barlow's grip tightened painfully on his shoulder. He kept one hand near Titan, who hadn't moved from his down position despite trembling with pain. His other hand stayed visible but ready, his military training humming just beneath the surface of his calm exterior. "Officer," Malcolm said quietly, "you're escalating a situation that doesn't require force." "Shut your mouth!" Barlow grabbed Malcolm's arm, trying to wrench him to his feet. "You're under arrest for interfering with—" Malcolm moved with fluid efficiency, redirecting Barlow's momentum while barely seeming to move at all. One moment Barlow was grabbing him. The next, the officer stumbled backward, his grip broken by a precise twist that looked almost gentle, but spoke of years of tactical training. Barlow's face contorted with shock and rage. He hadn't expected such skilled resistance. "That's assault on an officer." He reached for his radio. "I need backup at Harbor Walk now. Suspect and aggressive dog. Physical resistance." Titan remained perfectly still on the ground, following Malcolm's earlier command despite everything happening around him. The dog's disciplined behavior made Barlow's claims of aggression look increasingly absurd to the watching crowd. "Look at the dog!" someone shouted. "He's not even moving. That officer is the only one being aggressive. I got it all on video." 2 more patrol cars arrived within minutes, their sirens cutting through the morning air. Officers jumped out, hands on their weapons, responding to Barlow's calls about a violent suspect. They found instead a calm man standing beside a prone, injured dog, while their fellow officer worked himself into a frenzy. "He attacked me!" Barlow pointed at Malcolm. "Him and that vicious dog. I want him cuffed and that animal controlled." An older officer with sergeant's stripes approached, taking in the scene with experienced eyes. "Sir," he addressed Malcolm, "I need you to—" "Before this goes any further," Malcolm interrupted quietly, slowly reaching toward his back pocket, "I should show you something." The sergeant tensed, but Malcolm's movements were deliberate and non-threatening. He produced a leather wallet and held it out. The sergeant took it, flipped it open, and his eyes widened slightly. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," Malcolm said, his voice carrying clearly to the surrounding crowd. "I'd prefer to handle this professionally, without further incident." The effect was immediate. The sergeant's posture shifted, and the other officers lowered their hands from their weapons. Barlow's face drained of color as he realized what he'd done. And to whom? "Sir," the sergeant said carefully, "perhaps we should—" "What I want right now," Malcolm cut in, his tone brooked no argument, "is to get my injured dog to emergency veterinary care. Unless you plan to formally detain a federal agent?" The sergeant quickly shook his head. "No, sir. That won't be necessary." He shot a sharp look at Barlow, who had backed away several steps, his earlier bravado evaporating. Malcolm turned his attention back to Titan, who hadn't moved from his spot on the ground. Gently, he ran his hands over the dog's sides again, checking for obvious breaks. Titan whimpered softly at his touch, but remained steady. "Can you stand, boy?" Malcolm asked softly. Titan struggled to his feet, favoring his right side where Barlow's boot had connected. The crowd murmured in sympathy as Malcolm carefully guided his dog toward his black SUV parked nearby. With practiced care, Malcolm helped Titan into the back of the vehicle. The German shepherd settled onto his blanket, still trembling slightly, but maintaining his dignified bearing despite the pain. Malcolm could feel Barlow's glare burning into his back as he closed the car door, but he didn't acknowledge the officer. His priority now was getting Titan medical attention. Malcolm sat in the sterile examination room, one hand resting on Titan's neck, while Dr. Lena Morris carefully examined the German shepherd. The veterinarian's movements were precise and gentle, but Titan still flinched when she pressed along his ribcage. "I'm documenting significant bruising and soft tissue trauma," Dr. Morris said, making notes on her tablet. "The impact point shows a distinct boot-shaped pattern." She looked up at Malcolm with direct professional concern. "This injury is absolutely consistent with a forceful kick, not defensive action against an attacking animal." Malcolm nodded grimly. "I need that in writing, Doctor. Official letterhead." "Already working on it." She showed him photos she'd taken of the bruising pattern. "See this concentration of force here? This wasn't a pushing motion or a blocking strike. This was delivered with clear intent to harm." Titan whimpered softly as she continued her examination. Malcolm stroked his head, rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. "Will there be permanent damage?" "With proper rest and care, he should recover fully, but he'll be in considerable pain for at least a week." Dr. Morris straightened up. "I'm prescribing anti-inflammatory medication and recommending limited movement. No working duties for at least 14 days. While Dr. Morris prepared Titan's medication, Malcolm stepped into the hallway and called James Torres, a trusted colleague in the Bureau's Public Corruption Division. "I need a favor, James. Local incident this morning involving Officer Wade Barlow, Harbor District. Can you pull his incident report before anything gets cleaned up?" There was keyboard clicking on the other end. "Give me a minute." "Got it. Filed less than an hour ago. Says here you were walking an aggressive German shepherd that lunged at him. Claims you became combative when he took defensive action." Malcolm's jaw tightened. He filed that fast because he's done this before. "Standard playbook. Attack first, then paint the victim as the aggressor. Want me to start digging?" "Not yet. Just preserve everything. Body cam footage, dispatch recordings, Witness statements. This isn't over. The clinic's front door chimed. Evelyn Vance hurried in, her usual composed demeanor cracked by worry and anger. Behind her came Naomi, still wearing scrubs from her physical therapy clinic. "How is he?" Evelyn demanded, reaching for Malcolm's arm. "Bruised ribs, soft tissue damage. He'll recover." Malcolm led them to where Titan lay on the examination table. But that officer filed a false report claiming Titan attacked him. "Of course he did," Evelyn said bitterly. "That man's been terrorizing people in our neighborhood for months now, especially the older folks who won't sell their homes." Malcolm turned to his mother sharply. "What do you mean?" "Wade Barlow's been targeting anyone who doesn't fit his idea of who belongs in the new Harbor District." Evelyn's voice dripped with disgust. "Constant tickets, stops, harassment. Remember Gloria Bell? That sweet lady who's lived on my street for 40 years? They hit her with thousands in code violations right after she turned down some developer's lowball offer." Naomi nodded. "Same thing happened to Mr. Washington when he refused to sell his corner lot. Suddenly his tenants were getting pulled over every day, cited for noise complaints that never happened. He ended up selling just to make it stop." Dr. Morris returned with Titan's medication and care instructions. While she explained the treatment plan, Malcolm's mind was already mapping connections. The speed of Barlow's false report, the pattern of harassment, the pressure on longtime residents. It fit the profile of coordinated corruption he'd seen before. "Has anyone filed complaints?" he asked his mother. "What's the point?" Evelyn replied. "Nothing ever comes of it. Most folks can't afford lawyers, and the police protect their own." Malcolm helped Titan down from the examination table, watching as his dog moved stiffly but stoically. "Not this time." Dr. Morris handed him the detailed medical report and prescriptions. "I've documented everything thoroughly, including photographs. If you need me to testify about the nature of these injuries, I will." "Thank you, doctor." Malcolm carefully folded the papers into his jacket. "You may hear from federal investigators about this." "Federal?" Naomi's eyebrows rose. "Malcolm, are you sure you want to—" "What I want," he cut in quietly, "is to understand why a local cop felt comfortable assaulting a leashed dog in broad daylight, and why our neighbors are being systematically driven out of their homes." Evelyn touched his arm. "Baby, I know that look. Just remember, you've got more to lose than Barlow does." "Actually," Malcolm said, helping Titan walk toward the exit, "I think Officer Barlow and his friends are about to learn exactly how much they have to lose." They made their way to the parking lot, where Malcolm carefully helped Titan into his mother's car. The German Shepherd settled onto the back seat, with a soft grunt of pain. "He'll stay at your house tonight," Malcolm told Evelyn. "I want to monitor him closely for the first 24 hours. Naomi hugged him tightly. "I'll bring dinner over. And Malcolm, be careful. Men like Barlow are most dangerous when they're embarrassed." Malcolm watched them drive away, Titan's dark eyes meeting his through the rear window. The dog's quiet dignity in the face of cruelty only strengthened his resolve. This wasn't going to end with a complaint form buried in some internal affairs file. Something bigger was happening in their neighborhood, and Barlow had just given Malcolm the perfect reason to tear it all open. Malcolm sat at his mother's kitchen table, steam rising from a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. Titan lay at his feet, medication making him drowsy but not dulling the occasional whimper when he shifted position. The late afternoon sun slanted through lace curtains Evelyn had hung decades ago, casting familiar patterns across scattered papers and photos. "It started small," Evelyn said, spreading out parking tickets like playing cards. "A ticket here, a warning there, but always targeting the same people." She tapped one citation dated 3 months ago. "Mrs. Thompson, 82 years old, got 4 tickets in 1 week for her grandson's car being too close to the crosswalk. The boy was helping her with groceries." Malcolm picked up the ticket, studying the officer's signature. "Barlow?" "Every single one." Evelyn's voice carried years of controlled anger. Then came the property violations. Suddenly, Porches that passed inspection for 30 years were structurally unsound. Gardens that won community awards became overgrown hazards. Naomi leaned forward, still in her clinic scrubs after closing early. My patients talk, Malcolm. Especially the older ones who've lived here forever. They're scared. She rubbed her temples. Last month, Mr. Rodriguez. You remember him, Mama? His arthritis patients. Evelyn nodded. Sweet man. Makes those little wooden birds. He told me someone kept parking patrol cars outside his house at night, lights flashing every hour or so, just long enough to wake him up. This went on for weeks, until he agreed to sell. Malcolm's hand tightened around his coffee cup. Who bought it? Some company called Waterfront Holdings, LLC. Naomi pulled out her phone, showing him the sale listing. But 3 other houses on that block sold to different company names. Bayview Properties, Harbor District Investments. A knock at the back door interrupted them. Gloria Bell stood on the porch, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Her silver hair was perfectly styled for church tomorrow, contrasting with the worry lines around her eyes. I'm sorry to bother you, Evelyn, she said, as they ushered her inside. But these came yesterday, and Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. I don't understand what they want me to fix. Malcolm helped her settle into a chair while Evelyn poured tea. Gloria had been his mother's friend for decades, their children growing up together. Now she looked small, frightened in a way that made his chest tight with anger. He spread out the violation notices. The language was deliberately complex, but the pattern was clear. Foundation issues requiring engineering studies, electrical systems needing complete replacement, setback violations that would require moving walls. Each notice gave 14 days to comply. These repairs would cost more than the house is worth, he said quietly. Gloria's teacup rattled against its saucer. A man came by last week, said his name was Caleb Mercer, talked about how the neighborhood was upgrading and offered to take the house off my hands. She pulled out a business card with an embossed logo. Said it would be easier than dealing with all the citations. Malcolm examined the card. The logo matched smaller prints on development signs he'd seen around the harbor. Did Mercer mention knowing anyone in the police department? Not directly, but he knew about the violations before I got them. Said his company could handle the proper paperwork once I signed. Naomi spread more papers across the table. Look at this. Mercer's company names keep changing, but the address is always the same office suite. And these property records show he's buying through different shell companies, all targeting specific blocks. Malcolm stood, pacing as he assembled the pieces. The harbor district formed a perfect corridor from the water to the old town center. Barlow's patrol route covered exactly that zone, focusing pressure on long-time homeowners who wouldn't sell. The kick that morning hadn't been random frustration, it was intimidation with a purpose. They're clearing us out, Evelyn said softly, block by block, house by house, using badges and building codes instead of burning crosses. A metallic rattle from outside made them all jump. Malcolm was at the front door in 3 steps, but only caught a glimpse of taillights disappearing around the corner. The mailbox door hung open, swinging in the evening breeze. Titan tried to rise, but Malcolm ordered him to stay. The dog's protective instincts fought against his injuries and the medication. Malcolm checked the yard quickly, then examined the mailbox. No damage, just a warning. The message was clear. We can reach you any time. Back inside, Naomi was checking her phone with shaking hands. Malcolm, she held out the screen. An anonymous text message glowed against the darkness. Leave local business alone. Final warning. Evelyn moved to close the curtains. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Malcolm watched his sister sink into a chair, watched Gloria dabbing tears with a tissue, watched his mother's shoulders square against familiar fear. Titan dragged himself over to lay his head on Malcolm's shoe, still trying to protect despite his pain. No, Malcolm said, his voice deadly quiet. They're not hiding. They're comfortable. They think no one can touch them. He gathered the scattered papers, organizing them with federal precision. That's about to change. Malcolm knelt beside the mailbox, phone camera catching the scraped metal where someone had yanked the door. The flash illuminated fresh scratches against older paint, evidence of deliberate tampering rather than random vandalism. He photographed from multiple angles, then created a new encrypted folder labeled Harbor District Incidents. Inside, Naomi's phone buzzed again. No new threats, just her son asking when she'd be home. The original warning message stayed frozen on her screen while Malcolm documented it, noting timestamps and the masked number. "I'm keeping records too," Evelyn said, bringing out a leather-bound calendar. Each page held neat annotations: dates, times, license plates of slow-passing patrol cars. "Been doing it since they started hassling Gloria." Malcolm squeezed her shoulder. "Smart. We need everything." He helped Gloria settle onto the porch swing, its familiar creak matching the rhythm of crickets starting their night songs. Titan watched through the screen door, too medicated to join them, but still tracking movement from his bed. "Tell me exactly what Mercer said when he visited," Malcolm prompted, phone ready to record. Gloria smoothed her skirt, hands trembling slightly. "He came on a Tuesday. Very polite at first. Brought coffee cake from that expensive bakery near the marina." She pressed her lips together. "Said the neighborhood was evolving, and older homes needed extensive updates to meet new codes. Offered cash, right there, in an envelope." "How much?" "50,000 over market. Said it was a courtesy to avoid complicated proceedings." Her voice hardened. "I told him my Harold built this house. Our children were born here. Money's not everything." What happened next? 2 days later, city inspectors showed up. Found problems no one had seen in 40 years of living here. She pulled more papers from her purse, violations identical to the ones targeting other holdout properties. The young man, he almost looked embarrassed writing them up. Said his supervisor insisted. Malcolm documented each citation, noting matching language across properties. Did Mercer mention working with local authorities? Not directly. But he knew things: which houses had violations pending, who was considering selling. Said it would be unfortunate if elderly residents faced legal troubles over code compliance. Gloria's hands clenched. "I may be old, but I know a threat when I hear one dressed up pretty." Malcolm helped her inside, then walked the block while darkness settled. Old oaks lined the street, their shadows perfect cover for watching cars. He knocked on 2 doors before it got too late. Mrs. Chen next door spoke through a crack, fear evident in her whispers. Yes, she'd gotten citations too. Yes, strange cars parked outside at night. No, she couldn't go on record. Her grandson was applying to the police academy. 3 houses down, Mr. Washington invited Malcolm in, but kept glancing through his curtains. He'd lived there 30 years, never had trouble until recently. Now his disability ramp was suddenly non-compliant despite meeting code when installed. He showed Malcolm photos of patrol cars blocking his driveway, ticketing his nurse's vehicle. "I want to fight it," Washington said, "but my heart can't take the stress." "They know that." Outside again, Malcolm noted a dark sedan cruising past, too slow for normal traffic. The driver's face stayed shadowed, but the deliberate pace screamed surveillance. He memorized the plate while pretending to check his phone. In his SUV, Malcolm called his FBI supervisor, Assistant Special Agent Diana Torres. He laid out only the provable elements: documented harassment patterns, selective enforcement, possible corruption involving development deals. "Tread carefully," Torres warned. "Local police misconduct needs clear federal predicates. Document everything, but don't engage until we have jurisdiction." "Understood," Malcolm said, knowing she heard his unspoken reservation. "I mean it, Vance. Don't let them bait you into something we can't defend." "Copy that." He ended the call, watching another unmarked car roll by. Torres was right about procedure, but procedure wouldn't stop Barlow's crew from escalating. The message at the mailbox proved they were already targeting family. Waiting for perfect evidence while predators circled would only teach them that intimidation worked. Back inside, Malcolm secured doors and windows while Evelyn prepared the guest room. Naomi had gone home to her son, promising to install security cameras first thing tomorrow. Gloria left armed with Malcolm's direct line and instructions to document everything. Titan dragged himself to the living room couch where Malcolm would sleep, determined to guard despite his injuries. The sedatives made his movements clumsy, but his ears stayed alert, tracking sounds outside. Near midnight, Malcolm positioned himself by the window, service weapon within reach but hidden from street view. Titan's low growl drew his attention to another set of headlights, moving slower than a walking pace past Evelyn's house. The car lingered, engine idling, before continuing down the block. Malcolm jerked awake at first light, his neck stiff from Evelyn's ancient couch. Through the window, dawn painted the street in watercolor grays. Titan lifted his head from his bed, tail thumping weakly against the floor. "Easy, boy." Malcolm knelt to check the bruising. The swelling had decreased, but Titan's ribs remained tender. The shepherd pushed to his feet anyway, determined to work. Just a short walk, then rest. Evelyn was already in the kitchen, coffee brewing. "You look terrible," she said, sliding him a mug. "Did you sleep at all?" "Enough." Malcolm watched 3 cars pass, all residents he recognized heading to early church service. "We need to talk to everyone today. Build the full picture. I'll change and come with you. Some folks won't open up to strangers, badge or no badge." They started with Mrs. Patterson next door, catching her before church. Her hands shook as she retrieved a stack of parking tickets from her kitchen drawer. "Every Wednesday, when my grandson visits. Officer Barlow says we can't park on the street overnight anymore. May I?" Malcolm photographed each citation. Same officer, same violation code, targeting family visit nights. "When did this start?" "After I told that developer no." She glanced nervously through her curtains. "Mr. Mercer seemed so nice at first. Said he'd help me move somewhere more suitable for seniors." Her voice hardened. "This house was suitable enough when we integrated the block in '65. House by house, the pattern deepened. Mr. Jefferson showed them towing receipts for his restored Cadillac. Suddenly, a code violation after 30 years. The Williams sisters had water pressure problems right after refusing Mercer's offer. Mrs. Robinson's home health care aide kept getting ticketed until she quit. Titan walked slowly beside them, his usual patrol stance modified to protect his injury. His presence drew people out. Neighbors who'd been hesitant to speak watched the gentle shepherd and saw the evidence of Barlow's cruelty. "That dog ain't aggressive," Mr. Washington declared from his porch, eyeing Titan's careful movements. "I seen him every morning. Better behaved than most people. What that officer did—" He shook his head and invited them inside. Malcolm recorded everything on his phone while Evelyn provided context, filling in family connections and history. She knew which feuds were genuine and which grievances traced back to harassment. "Remember when the Baker family had to sell?" she asked Mrs. Thompson, their 4th interview. "Right after those mysterious plumbing complaints?" "Lord, yes. Inspector showed up 3 times in 1 week. Then Mercer's company bought it for half what it's worth now." By noon, they had statements from 11 households. Malcolm drove the evidence to Naomi's clinic, where she'd offered to make copies and help organize the timeline. Her Sunday schedule was light, just monitoring 2 post-surgery patients. "Look at this," she said, spreading documents across her desk. "Every major code violation follows a rejected offer from Mercer within 2 weeks. And Barlow's name is all over the police reports." Malcolm studied the pattern. "They're isolating targets. Each family thinks they're alone until we lay it all out." He rubbed Titan's ears as the dog settled carefully by his feet. How's the security camera installation going? Running behind. My regular guy can't come until Tuesday. Naomi glanced out her window. But I moved the most sensitive files off-site, just in case. They worked through lunch, building the case. Around 2, Mrs. Thompson called. Her sister worked in city planning and had mentioned something interesting. A young records clerk named Amy Zhang had complained about irregular file access after hours. She said permit histories kept changing, Mrs. Thompson reported, especially on properties Mercer was interested in. When she reported it, her supervisor told her to focus on her own work. Malcolm arranged to meet Zhang tomorrow morning before her shift. If official records were being altered, that elevated the case beyond simple harassment. He thanked Mrs. Thompson and headed back to Evelyn's, where Titan needed his evening medication. The street felt different now. Every parked car a potential observer, every shadow a possible threat. Malcolm had worked enough corruption cases to know surveillance usually preceded pressure. He helped Titan into the back seat of his SUV, careful of the dog's injured side. A familiar white cruiser appeared at the end of the block. Barlow, right on cue. The patrol car crept past them at walking speed, the officer's face expressionless behind his sunglasses. Malcolm stood his ground beside his vehicle, one hand resting protectively near Titan. The cruiser's window lowered with a mechanical whir. Barlow didn't speak, just held Malcolm's gaze for 3 long seconds before continuing his crawl down the street. The message was clear. I'm watching. I can reach you any time. Titan growled softly from the back seat. Malcolm kept his face neutral until Barlow's car disappeared around the corner. Inside the house, he added the surveillance pass to his growing evidence log, time-stamping the obvious intimidation attempt. The dining room felt smaller than usual, compressed by tension. Malcolm watched Evelyn arrange her famous Sunday pot roast, while Naomi set places for 3. Titan lay in his usual corner, medication making him drowsy, but alert enough to track movement through the window. He's trying to intimidate us, Naomi said, finally addressing Barlow's slow drive-by. Like we're supposed to just fold up and disappear. That man's badge isn't a crown, Evelyn replied, passing the potatoes. My daddy didn't march in Selma for us to bow our heads now. Malcolm was measuring his response when Naomi's phone buzzed. Her face tightened as she read the message. Well, that didn't take long. Surprise sanitation review at the clinic tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp. Your last inspection was perfect, Evelyn protested. 3 months ago. Naomi set her phone down carefully, the way she did when controlling anger. Nothing's changed, except I helped gather statements today. Malcolm nodded grimly. They're moving fast, trying to hit everywhere at once. Let them come, Naomi said. My permits are current, my procedures are documented, and my patients need that clinic. I'm not shutting down because some corrupt cop wants to flex. The doorbell rang. Titan raised his head, but Malcolm motioned him to stay down. Through the security panel Evelyn had installed last year, they saw Mrs. Patterson from next door, clutching an official envelope. Sorry to interrupt dinner, she said when they let her in. But I thought you should see this right away. She handed the envelope to Evelyn. Same letter came to 4 houses on the block. Evelyn scanned the document, her expression hardening. Property line dispute? This fence has been here 30 years. She passed the notice to Malcolm. Now, they're saying it encroaches 6 inches onto city easement. Malcolm studied the paperwork. Same department that had harassed Gloria Bell. Same impossible response timeline. They want you to move the fence or face daily fines. Due process apparently means 10 days' notice now. 10 days to hire a surveyor, get permits, and relocate fencing? Naomi shook her head. They're not even pretending this is legitimate anymore. Mrs. Patterson wrung her hands. What do we do? I can't afford thousands in fines, but moving my fence will cost even more. First, we document everything, Malcolm said. He retrieved his laptop and began photographing the notice. Second, we stick together. They want us isolated and overwhelmed. Don't let them separate us. After Mrs. Patterson left, Malcolm excused himself to secure their evidence. In his SUV, he copied all photos and witness statements to encrypted drives. One for Naomi to store at her friend's house across town. Another hidden in Evelyn's attic behind loose insulation. The originals stayed with him. Back inside, he found Evelyn on the phone with Gloria. "No, honey. Don't stay there alone tomorrow. Come here after your doctor's appointment. We'll have lunch, maybe play some cards." She caught Malcolm's approving nod. "They're targeting anyone who might testify," he explained after she hung up. Gloria's statement about the code violations is too specific, too damaging. Better if she's not isolated. Naomi pushed away her barely touched dinner. "This is about more than property values, isn't it? They're trying to erase a whole community." "One citation at a time," Evelyn agreed. "Like water wearing down a stone. Each little pressure point looks legal on paper." Malcolm started to respond when Titan suddenly stiffened, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Despite his injuries, the shepherd's posture shifted to alert. Malcolm moved to the window in time to see someone in a dark jacket raise what looked like a phone or camera toward the house. "Stay inside," he ordered, already moving. But by the time he reached the front door, the figure was gone. Only the sound of running footsteps fading down the block suggested anyone had been there. Malcolm examined the sidewalk where the photographer had stood. No dropped items, no obvious traces. Just another form of surveillance, another message. "We're watching. We can reach you anywhere." Back inside, he found Evelyn securing windows while Naomi comforted Titan. The dog's protective instincts fought against his medication, making him restless. "Try to get some sleep," Malcolm told them. "I'm meeting that records clerk early tomorrow. If they're altering official files, that's federal jurisdiction. One solid piece of proof and we can bring in outside oversight." "Be careful," Evelyn said. "That clerk is taking a huge risk talking to you." Malcolm nodded grimly. "I'll park a few blocks away. Approach on foot." No chances. But as he prepared for bed, converting Evelyn's couch into his temporary command post, Malcolm couldn't shake a cold certainty. Tomorrow would bring escalation. The machine was fully activated now. Every pressure point would be squeezed, every vulnerability probed. He checked his weapon, verified his backup phone was charged, and settled in for another night of interrupted sleep. At 4 a.m., he would head downtown to meet Amy Zhang before her shift. The clerk's evidence might be their best chance at cracking this wide open. Titan shifted in his bed, still favoring his injured side, but maintaining his guard position facing the front door. Outside, a car rolled past with its lights off. Malcolm added it to his mental log without moving. Let them watch. Tomorrow would bring proof. The parking garage echoed with early morning emptiness as Malcolm climbed the concrete ramp to level 3. His footsteps bounced off bare walls, matching the hollow feeling in his stomach. At 5:45 a.m., the structure was still dark except for scattered security lights that cast long shadows between the support pillars. Raphael Dunn stood near his weathered Honda Civic, shoulders hunched against the morning chill. The records clerk kept glancing toward the stairwell door, his fingers drumming against a manila envelope. When he spotted Malcolm, relief flickered across his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Raphael said quietly. "After what happened to the last person who talked." Malcolm kept his stance relaxed, but maintained clear sight lines to both ramps. "What happened to them?" "Transfer to record storage in the basement. No phone, no computer access. Just endless box sorting until they quit." Raphael's voice dropped lower. "But that's not why I called you. These files, something's wrong with them. Really wrong." He pulled papers from the envelope with trembling hands. "See these transaction dates? Property liens filed and cleared in hours instead of weeks. Code violations appearing with backdated timestamps. Ownership transfers pushed through without normal review periods." Malcolm studied the documents. All tied to Mercer's acquisitions. His shell companies. Different names, but same patterns. And look, Raphael spread more pages across his car hood. Internal logs showing file access after hours. Records moved between departments without proper requests. I started printing these because the digital copies keep vanishing from the system. A car door slammed somewhere below them. Raphael flinched. "When did you first notice?" Malcolm asked, photographing key pages with his phone. "About 6 months ago. Small things at first. But lately—" Raphael froze, eyes fixed over Malcolm's shoulder. Malcolm heard the footsteps too late. The stairwell door banged open as two masked figures rushed out. A third man gunned an SUV up the ramp, blocking their escape route. "Down!" Malcolm shoved Raphael behind a concrete pillar as the first attacker swung a tire iron. The metal bar whistled past Malcolm's head and clanged against the column. Papers scattered across the oil-stained floor. Malcolm caught the second swing and twisted, using the attacker's momentum to slam him into a parked sedan. The man grunted, but kept his grip on the weapon. His partner circled wide, trying to flank them. "Stay behind me," Malcolm ordered Raphael, who had pressed himself against the Honda's passenger door. The clerk's face had gone ghost white. The SUV's engine revved. Headlights swept across them as it crept closer, herding them toward the other attackers. Malcolm recognized the tactic. They wanted to pin them against the vehicles. The man with the tire iron lunged again. Malcolm blocked with his forearm, absorbing a numbing impact, then drove his knee into the attacker's ribs. As the man doubled over, Malcolm stripped the weapon from his grip and sent it skittering under a car. But the second attacker was already moving. Malcolm caught a flash of metal, brass knuckles glinting in the dim light. He managed to deflect most of the punch, but the edge of the metal split his cheek. Blood trickled down his jaw. Raphael cried out as the third man left the SUV and grabbed him. Malcolm spun toward the sound, which left him open to a body shot from behind. Pain flared across his kidneys. He staggered but stayed up, muscle memory from years of training taking over. Malcolm drove an elbow back blindly, felt it connect, used the moment to create space. Then he went on the offensive, a precise combination of strikes that dropped one attacker to his knees, gasping. The second man backed away, hands raised. "The papers!" the man holding Raphael growled. "That's all we want. Give them up, and this ends." Malcolm saw Raphael's terror, saw the thin line of blood where a knife pressed against the clerk's throat. The scattered documents swirled in the SUV's exhaust. He feinted left, then exploded right. His shoulder caught the armed man in the sternum. The knife clattered away as they hit the ground. Raphael scrambled free. The SUV's engine roared. Malcolm rolled clear as it accelerated toward them. The vehicle clipped a pillar, showering concrete chips. He pulled Raphael behind a row of parked cars as the SUV screeched past. The other attackers were already running. One dropped something as he vaulted into the SUV's open door. The vehicle fishtailed toward the exit ramp, tires squealing. Then silence crashed back in, broken only by their heavy breathing and distant traffic. "Oh God, oh God!" Raphael slumped against a car, pressing his sleeve against a shallow cut on his neck. "They were waiting for us. They knew." Malcolm retrieved what the attacker had dropped, a cheap burner phone. Among the scattered papers, he found a torn receipt with partial account numbers. The rest were either shredded or had been scooped up during the fight. "I'm calling an ambulance," he said, studying Raphael's shaking hands and pale face. "You might need stitches." "They'll kill me," Raphael whispered. "Like they tried to kill her." "Who?" "Amy Zhang, the other clerk who noticed the files. They said she had a stroke at her desk last month, but I saw the bruises when they carried her out." Raphael's eyes were wide with fear. "I should have kept quiet, should have looked away like everyone else." Malcolm pressed a clean handkerchief against his own bleeding cheek. "You did the right thing. We'll get you somewhere safe." He could hear sirens approaching as he dialed 911. The parking garage felt colder now, the shadows deeper. The corruption ring had just shown exactly how far they would go to protect their secrets. And Malcolm knew with grim certainty that this was only the beginning. Malcolm sat in the emergency room, watching Raphael's hands shake as a nurse cleaned the cut on his neck. The fluorescent lights made the clerk's face look even paler than it had in the garage. Two plainclothes officers stood guard outside, called in by Malcolm's supervisor after he reported the attack. 3 stitches, the nurse said gently. You're lucky it wasn't deeper. Raphael nodded without speaking. His eyes kept darting to the door. I can arrange protective custody, Malcolm said quietly. Full federal witness protection if needed. I have a sister in Seattle. Raphael's voice was barely above a whisper. Maybe I could stay with her for a while. We'll make it happen. Malcolm pulled out his phone, grimacing at the movement. His back throbbed where he'd taken that hit. But first, I need your official statement about those records. Raphael took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Everything I saw, everything I printed, just keep me alive long enough to testify. Malcolm squeezed his shoulder. You have my word. An hour later, Malcolm walked stiffly into Naomi's clinic. She took one look at his face and pulled him into her office. Sit, she ordered, grabbing her first aid kit. That cut needs cleaning. It's not that bad. Shut up and let me work. She dabbed antiseptic on his cheek. The health inspector just left, by the way. Found nothing wrong, just like I knew they would. Their intimidation game failed. Malcolm managed a small smile. Good. We needed a win today. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Morris about Titan's follow-up report. He read it twice, satisfaction warming his chest. The vet's report is perfect, he told Naomi. Clear documentation of blunt force trauma consistent with a kick, not defensive action. She even noted Titan's calm behavior during examination despite significant pain. It destroys Barlow's aggressive dog narrative. And your face helps prove who the real aggressive one is, Naomi muttered, applying a butterfly bandage. Malcolm's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. Is this Agent Vance? The voice was male, hesitant. This is Elias Rowe. I'm an EMT. I was there Saturday at the harbor. Malcolm sat straighter. Yes, I remember you. I've been seeing stuff online about what happened. People saying your dog attacked, saying you got violent first. Elias paused. It's all lies. I watched that officer hassle you for no reason. Watched him kick your dog when it was just sitting there. I got it all on video. Hope surged in Malcolm's chest. Would you be willing to make an official statement? That's why I'm calling. I couldn't sleep last night thinking about it. I've worked with cops for years, but this was wrong. Pure bullying. And now they're trying to cover it up? Elias's voice hardened. I'll testify. Whatever you need. Thank you. Malcolm meant it deeply. This matters more than you know. After arranging to meet Elias the next morning, Malcolm called his FBI supervisor. The older agent listened carefully to the day's developments. So we've got falsified city records, witness intimidation, and now assault on a federal officer, his supervisor summarized. Plus medical evidence of excessive force and multiple witnesses to the initial incident. That's enough to justify preliminary support. I'll assign 2 agents to help track those shell companies. What about the body cam footage from responding officers? Working on it. Should have access by tonight. His supervisor paused. Watch yourself, Malcolm. They're getting desperate if they're willing to jump you in broad daylight. Malcolm spent the next few hours collecting formal statements. Dr. Morris provided detailed medical documentation. Raphael's testimony was recorded and notarized before he left for Seattle under protection. Elias emailed his phone video showing Titan's calm behavior. For the first time since Saturday, Malcolm felt real momentum. The pieces were falling into place. Even his bruises hurt less as he drove to Evelyn's house that evening, a folder of sworn statements on the passenger seat. He was halfway up her front walk when his phone exploded with notifications. Breaking news alerts, text messages, voicemails. Malcolm stopped cold as he read the first headline, Key Evidence Missing in Harbor Police Incident. The article quoted police spokesperson Sergeant Donna Creel. Due to technical malfunction, body cam footage from responding officers is unfortunately unavailable. However, Officer Barlow's written report clearly documents an aggressive animal and uncooperative subject. Malcolm's jaw clenched. Of course, they'd lost the footage. It was the one piece of evidence that could have instantly validated everything. Through Evelyn's window, he could see his mother and sister watching the same news break on TV. Naomi's face was tight with anger. Evelyn just looked tired, like she'd expected this all along. Malcolm touched the bandage on his cheek, feeling the sting beneath it. They thought destroying evidence would make him back down. They thought wrong. He had witnesses now, medical proof, financial records. Most importantly, he had the truth. The footage wasn't gone by accident, which meant someone had actively destroyed it. And that desperate act just added another provable crime to their growing list. Malcolm sat rigid on Evelyn's couch, watching the local news twist everything sideways. The TV anchor's concerned expression felt rehearsed as she spoke. Questions arise about federal overreach after an FBI agent's confrontation with local police this weekend. Sources say Agent Malcolm Vance became hostile during a routine safety check involving his large German Shepherd. Evelyn muted the TV. Lies. All of it. They're painting me as the aggressor. Malcolm's voice stayed steady, but his hands tightened into fists, making it sound like I'm abusing federal authority over a personal grudge. His phone vibrated. Another message from his supervisor. Malcolm, we've got problems. Internal Affairs is opening a review of the incident. Until it's resolved, you're restricted from field operations. Badge and credentials stay active, but you're essentially desk-bound. The walls seem to close in. Without active field status, his ability to investigate was cut in half. He could still gather evidence, but executing warrants or conducting official interviews was off-limits. They're trying to clip your wings, Naomi said, reading his expression. Make you powerless while they cover everything up. Malcolm's phone lit up with notifications. Someone had posted a long thread about Elias Rowe, the EMT witness, claiming he had a history of mental health issues and false complaints against police. Old social media posts were twisted to make him look unstable. Character assassination, Malcolm muttered. They're destroying his credibility before he can testify. He tried calling Raphael again. Straight to voicemail, just like the last 5 attempts. The clerk had vanished after leaving the hospital, despite promises to help. Malcolm suspected heavy pressure or threats had silenced him. Tea's ready, Evelyn announced, trying to maintain normalcy. She glanced at the clock. Gloria should be here any minute. She never misses our Monday evening talks. But 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Gloria didn't arrive or answer calls. Something's wrong. Evelyn grabbed her keys. She always calls if she's running late. They drove the short distance to Gloria's house. Even from the street, Malcolm saw the gray wisps seeping from behind drawn curtains. Smoke. No, no, no. Evelyn's voice cracked as Malcolm sprinted toward the house. The front door was locked. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He threw his shoulder into it hard, splintering the frame. Smoke rolled out, thick and acrid. The kind that came from accelerants, not accident. Gloria! He dropped low, moving through the haze. Gloria! Where are you? A weak cough answered from the kitchen. Malcolm found her slumped against the refrigerator, conscious but dazed. He scooped her up and carried her outside just as sirens wailed in the distance. They put something through my mail slot, Gloria wheezed as Evelyn held her. Some kind of bottle. Then everything started burning. Malcolm watched firefighters battle the blaze, fury building in his chest. The house Gloria had owned for 40 years, where she'd raised her children, was being gutted. Family photos curled and blackened. Her husband's war medals melted. Generations of memories reduced to ash. EMTs wrapped Gloria in a blanket and gave her oxygen. She'd survive, but the emotional wounds cut deep. This wasn't just property damage. It was psychological warfare against an elderly widow whose only crime was refusing to sell her home. "I should have seen this coming," Malcolm said quietly. "Should have had someone watching her house." "Don't you dare blame yourself," Evelyn snapped. "The only guilty ones are the monsters who did this." But the weight pressed down on him. In just 24 hours, they'd stripped away everything he could use to fight back. His active status was suspended. His key witness was discredited. His inside source had vanished. And now they'd nearly killed Gloria to send a message. The fire chief approached, notepad in hand. "Preliminary signs point to arson, some kind of homemade incendiary device. We'll know more after the investigation." Malcolm nodded numbly. He knew they'd never find proof linking it to Barlow or Mercer. The people behind this were too careful to leave traces. Naomi arrived, having closed her clinic early after hearing the news. She hugged Gloria tightly. "You're staying with me tonight." No arguments. Near midnight, Malcolm stood in the dying light of the emergency vehicles, watching water drip from Gloria's scorched eaves. Titan pressed against his leg, sensing his distress. The dog's ribs were still tender from Barlow's kick, a reminder of how this all started. Just days ago, Malcolm had been certain he could expose the corruption. Now his badge was essentially suspended, his investigation crippled, and an innocent woman had almost died. The enemy had outmaneuvered him at every turn, using their power to silence witnesses and destroy evidence while he played by rules that didn't protect the victims. He touched the bandage on his face from the garage fight, feeling the sting of failure beneath it. How many more people would get hurt while he tried to fight this legally? How many more homes would burn? The smoke hung in the air like accusation, reminding him that good intentions weren't enough against people willing to burn down an old woman's life to win. Malcolm sat at Evelyn's kitchen table, his clothes still reeking of smoke from Gloria's house. The coffee in front of him had gone cold, untouched. Dawn hadn't broken yet, but sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Gloria's home burning. "Stop torturing yourself," Evelyn said, sliding into the chair across from him. Her voice was tired but firm. "That guilt you're carrying isn't helping anyone. They almost killed her, Mom. Because I started pulling threads." "No." Evelyn's hand slapped the table, making him jump. "Gloria almost died because evil people think they can terrorize us out of our homes. Don't you dare take responsibility for their crimes." She stood up and walked to the hall closet, returning with a large plastic storage bin. "We're not as helpless as they think." She pulled off the lid and started removing notebooks, folders, and envelopes. "What is all this?" "Evidence." Evelyn laid out composition books filled with neat handwriting. Every time Barlow harassed someone on this block, every bogus ticket, every random stop of our visitors, dates, times, badge numbers, car descriptions. She smiled grimly. "You think we've just been sitting here taking it?" Malcolm picked up one of the notebooks. Pages of detailed entries documented police interactions, complete with witness names and phone numbers. Another folder contained parking citations, arranged by date, showing patterns of selective enforcement. "The church ladies have been keeping records too," Evelyn continued, pulling out more papers. "Sister Martha's group uses a phone tree to warn people when patrol cars start circling. Deacon Williams photographs every inspection notice and violation letter." She spread out dozens of real estate mailers from Mercer's various shell companies. Next to them, she placed a timeline showing increased police presence immediately after residents refused to sell. "We may not have fancy degrees, but we know how to pay attention. These aren't just complaints. They're proof of coordination. Every time Mercer's people got turned down, Barlow and his friends showed up to make life harder." Malcolm stared at the materials covering the table. "How long have you been collecting all this?" "Months. We stopped trusting official channels a long time ago, but we never stopped documenting." Evelyn's eyes were fierce. "We knew eventually someone would listen. We just didn't know it would be my own son." The front door opened, and Naomi entered with her teenage son, Andre. They'd been checking on Gloria at their house. "She's finally sleeping," Naomi reported. "The doctor said smoke inhalation was minimal, thank God." Andre looked at the spread of documents with interest. "You're showing him the evidence files?" "Evidence files." Malcolm turned to his nephew. "Yeah. I help a lot of older folks in the neighborhood with their computers and security cameras. Been backing up footage for months, just in case." Andre pulled out his laptop. "Most people don't realize their systems overwrite after 30 days, unless you save the files." Malcolm leaned forward. "You have security footage from around here?" "From like half the block. Plus some businesses near the harbor where I help with their Wi-Fi." Andre opened several folders of video files. "I always make copies when I'm working on their systems. Better safe than sorry, right?" Malcolm felt a spark of hope for the first time since the fire. "The harbor. Andre, do you have any backup footage from Saturday morning? Anywhere near where Barlow confronted us?" "Let me check." Andre scrolled through dated folders. "Yeah, there's some from the coffee shop on the corner. And the boutique across the street had their outdoor cameras running." They gathered around the laptop as Andre pulled up the files. Malcolm watched footage from different angles, showing the harbor walkway where everything started. "There," he pointed. "That camera has a clear view of where we were standing." The video quality wasn't perfect, but it clearly showed Malcolm and Titan before Barlow arrived. The German Shepherd sat calmly at heel, completely contradicting the officer's claim about an aggressive dog. "Can you back it up about 30 seconds?" Malcolm asked. "I need to see something specific." Andre rewound the footage. The new angle revealed something crucial. Titan was seated and calm mere seconds before Barlow's assault, destroying any claim that the kick was a response to threatening behavior. "This is it," Malcolm said quietly. "This proves Barlow lied in his report. The dog was never aggressive. I was never combative. He created a confrontation and then falsified the documentation. And we've got months of evidence showing it wasn't an isolated incident," Evelyn added. "It was part of a pattern targeting specific homeowners." Malcolm looked at the materials spread across the table: handwritten records from trusted church elders, documented patterns of harassment, security footage backing up witness accounts. The corrupt system had dismissed these people as powerless, never imagining they were quietly building an airtight case. "They thought we were easy targets," Evelyn said, reading his expression. "They never considered that old folks with phone trees and notebooks could bring them down." Naomi squeezed her son's shoulder. "Or that a teenager backing up security footage might have exactly what we needed." Malcolm nodded, energy returning as pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just scattered complaints anymore. This was coordinated evidence of systematic harassment tied to real estate pressure. And it had been gathering right under Barlow's nose, collected by the very people he thought too weak to fight back. The fluorescent lights hummed in Naomi's empty clinic as Malcolm leaned over Andre's shoulder, watching him navigate through folders of backed-up security footage. Evelyn sat nearby, sorting through her collection of documented incidents, while Naomi kept watch at the front window for early patients. "Here's the pharmacy backup from Saturday," Andre said, clicking through timestamps. Their camera covers part of the harbor walkway. The footage was grainier than modern security systems, but the scene was unmistakable. Malcolm and Titan appeared in frame at 11:23 a.m., walking past the corner drugstore. The German Shepherd moved with perfect discipline, staying close to Malcolm's left leg. "Stop there," Malcolm pointed. "Can you zoom in?" Andre enhanced the image. The crucial moment played out in perfect clarity. Titan sitting calmly at Malcolm's side, head level, no aggression whatsoever. The timestamp showed 11:24:47 a.m., less than 30 seconds before Barlow approached. "That's what we needed," Malcolm said. "This proves Titan was under control when Barlow claimed he was lunging. The timing destroys his whole narrative." Evelyn nodded grimly. "No wonder they made the body cam footage disappear. This shows exactly what really happened." Malcolm's phone buzzed. A message from his bureau tech contact about the burner phone recovered from the parking garage attack. He opened the file and began reading through extracted text messages. "Listen to this," he said. "Tell Kay the South Block is clear after today's pressure. Moving on schedule for Q3 numbers. That's dated last month." "What does that mean?" Naomi asked, rejoining them from her watch position. "It means they're working on a timeline," Malcolm explained. "Quarterly real estate closings. They're coordinating the harassment to force sales by specific dates." He scrolled through more messages. "Creel confirms 2 more holdouts ready to fold. Send crew to Bell property tonight. Make it look random." The casual cruelty made his jaw clench. "Here's the smoking gun," he said, pointing to one exchange. "Sergeant K clearing remaining holdouts before quarter close. Premium bonus for each lot secured." "Sergeant Creel," Evelyn spat the name. "She's been running interference for Mercer this whole time." Malcolm nodded. "She coordinates which properties get targeted, makes sure complaints disappear, probably handles the payoffs too. This ties the whole operation together. Real estate pressure, selective enforcement, orchestrated intimidation." Andre had been quiet, still examining the security footage. "Uncle Malcolm, look at this frame. You can actually see Barlow's car slowing down before he even claims to notice Titan. He was hunting for a reason to stop you." "Save everything," Malcolm instructed. "Multiple copies, different locations. They've already tried destroying evidence once." His phone buzzed again, his FBI supervisor calling. Malcolm stepped into Naomi's office to take it privately. 10 minutes later, he emerged with new energy in his stride. "The Bureau's back in," he announced. "These messages plus the arson attempt give us multiple federal predicates. Civil rights violations, conspiracy, extortion across property lines. They're authorizing full surveillance starting today." "What about your internal review?" Naomi asked. "Suspended once they saw the pharmacy footage. Hard to paint me as the aggressor when video shows Titan sitting calmly before Barlow attacked." Evelyn smiled. "Sometimes the truth just needs a little help getting free." Malcolm's phone lit up with another message. His expression darkened as he read it. "What is it?" Naomi asked. "One of Gloria's neighbors just called. Mercer's people are moving fast. They've scheduled a closing meeting for tomorrow morning, trying to grab her property while she's still reeling from the fire." "Those vultures!" Evelyn hissed. "They burn down her home, then swoop in to take advantage while she's vulnerable." "They think she's broken," Naomi added, "that she'll sign anything just to escape." Malcolm stood silently for a moment, thinking. The others watched him, recognizing his tactical assessment expression from years of federal work. "Andre, can you get me everything you have on Mercer's shell companies? Property records? Tax files? Anything that shows the pattern?" "Already compiled," Andre said, pulling up another folder. "I've been tracking their different names for months. Same players, just shuffling paperwork." Malcolm studied the documents, then checked something on his phone. Finally, he looked up with cold determination. "We're not going to stop tomorrow's meeting," he said. "What?" Evelyn straightened in her chair. "Malcolm, they're trying to steal Gloria's property." "I know, and we're going to let them try." His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Because this time, they'll be doing it under federal surveillance, with documented evidence of their prior intimidation, and witnesses ready to testify." Understanding dawned on Naomi's face. "You're going to let them walk right into their own trap." "Exactly. They think Gloria is alone and defeated. They have no idea we've been building a case. Let them come to that meeting thinking they've won. It'll be the last property they try to steal." Andre finished backing up the latest files. "All the evidence is secured, Uncle Malcolm. Multiple copies, different drives." Malcolm nodded, checking his watch. It was just past noon. In less than 24 hours, Mercer and his allies would walk into a closing meeting, believing they were about to claim another victory. Instead, they would find themselves at the center of a federal corruption case, with every piece of evidence needed to bring down their entire operation. Malcolm sat in a windowless federal office, surrounded by tactical maps and surveillance photos. 4 senior agents listened as he detailed the web of corruption threatening his neighborhood. Agent Sarah Torres, lead investigator for public corruption cases, spread property records across the conference table. "Mercer's gotten bold," she said, tapping a document. "His shell companies aren't even trying to hide the pattern anymore. Same registered agents, same payment structures, all targeting elderly homeowners after code violations magically appear." "He thinks he's untouchable," Malcolm replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Local authorities are in his pocket, and most victims can't afford to fight back." Agent James Rivera, technical surveillance expert, pulled up images on his laptop. "We've mapped all cameras and listening posts for tomorrow. The redevelopment office Mercer chose for the closing gives us good angles. He picked it because he controls it. But that works in our favor. Easier to plant equipment when you know the target's habits." Malcolm nodded. "Gloria's lawyer will keep her away until the final signing. Mercer needs to believe she's broken, willing to take any offer to escape." "Your mother and sister?" Torres asked. "Safe at Naomi's clinic. We've got plainclothes units watching the building, and the local FBI field office is running counter-surveillance in case Creel tries anything." Director Phillips, a veteran agent with steel-gray hair, studied Malcolm carefully. "You sure you want to be there tomorrow? You're still technically restricted, and those bruises from the garage fight aren't helping your cover." "That's exactly why I need to be there," Malcolm insisted. "Mercer and Barlow are fixated on breaking me personally now. They'll be less cautious if they think they're getting a chance to humiliate me again." "It's risky," Torres warned. "Barlow's already proved he's unstable." "Which makes him predictable," Malcolm countered. "He'll want to be there to watch me lose. And his presence ties the police harassment directly to Mercer's operation. We need that connection on record." Rivera adjusted his wireframe glasses. "What about your dog?" "The vet cleared him this afternoon, but he's still recovering. Titan stays in the surveillance van unless needed. He's trained for tracking and control, not attack. Just having him nearby gives us options if someone tries to run." Director Phillips opened a thick folder of warrants. "We've got authorization for everything: financial records, electronic surveillance, property searches, and arrests if needed. All processed through federal channels to avoid local leaks." "Sergeant Creel?" Malcolm asked. "She'll be in the dark until it's too late," Torres assured him. "We're coordinating with internal affairs from 3 counties over. No one in her command structure knows what's coming." They spent the next hour rehearsing positions and contingencies. Malcolm memorized every detail: surveillance points, backup teams, emergency signals. His presence tomorrow would be officially listed as civilian witness, but everyone in the room knew he was the operation's emotional center. "One last thing," Director Phillips said as they prepared to leave. "We've got Gloria's property surrounded tonight. Fire department's been quietly notified too. No more surprise arsons." Malcolm felt some tension ease from his shoulders. "Thank you. She's lost enough already." "This is good work, Vance," Phillips added. "You took a personal attack and turned it into a chance to break open something much bigger. That's what the Bureau stands for." Outside the federal building, the autumn evening had turned cool and clear. Malcolm sat in his SUV for a moment, reviewing the operation in his mind. Everything was positioned. Gloria's lawyer would call Mercer's office at 9 a.m., sounding defeated and ready to surrender the property. The closing was set for 11. Surveillance teams would be in place by 10. Local media had been tipped about possible development news to ensure public coverage. The trap was set. Now they just had to let the predators walk into it. Malcolm drove to Naomi's clinic first. Through the window, he saw his sister checking on Gloria, who had finally fallen asleep in a reclining chair. Evelyn sat nearby, her Bible open in her lap but her eyes alert, watching the door. They were safe. At home, Malcolm made a final security sweep before entering. Titan lifted his head as Malcolm walked in, thumping his tail against the floor. The dog's ribs were still tender, but his eyes were bright and focused again. Malcolm knelt beside him, running a gentle hand over the healing flank. "Almost done, boy. You did everything right, and tomorrow we finish this." Titan pressed his muzzle against Malcolm's palm, offering quiet comfort. The dog's unwavering loyalty, even after being attacked, reminded Malcolm why this fight mattered. It wasn't just about property or pride anymore. It was about standing up to bullies who thought they could hurt the vulnerable without consequences. Malcolm checked each room one last time. Evelyn's family photos watched over the quiet house, 4 generations of people who had fought to build something worth protecting. Tomorrow, he would show Mercer, Barlow, and everyone like them that they had picked the wrong neighborhood to tear apart. Returning to the living room, Malcolm settled onto the couch where he'd been sleeping since Saturday. Titan curled at his feet, alert even in rest. "Get some sleep," Malcolm told him softly. "Tomorrow, we make it right." Malcolm straightened his tie and checked his reflection in the redevelopment office's glass doors. His bruises from Monday's garage fight were still visible, perfect for selling the image of a defeated man. He entered the modern lobby where a receptionist directed him to the third-floor conference room. The elevator doors opened to reveal Caleb Mercer, waiting in an expensive charcoal suit, his smile practiced and predatory. Behind him, Wade Barlow loomed in plain clothes, arms crossed, a private security badge clipped to his belt instead of a police shield. The sight confirmed what Malcolm needed, direct evidence linking the corrupt cop to Mercer's operation. "Agent Vance," Mercer said smoothly, "I didn't expect you to attend today's closing. This must be difficult for you." Malcolm kept his expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Bell asked me to witness the transfer. Given recent events, she wants everything properly documented." Of course. Mercer gestured toward the conference room. "Though I'm surprised you'd want to watch another pillar of your community fall. First your reputation, now Gloria's legacy." Barlow smirked, clearly enjoying Malcolm's apparent powerlessness. The officer's hand rested near his concealed baton, eager for any excuse. They entered the glass-walled conference room with its view of the harbor. Malcolm noted the surveillance positions hidden in neighboring buildings, knowing federal teams were watching every move. His wire picked up each word as Mercer settled into his chair at the head of the polished table. "I understand you've been asking questions about my development projects," Mercer said, arranging papers before him. "That's caused some unfortunate tension with local authorities." "Just trying to understand the process," Malcolm replied. "Seems like a lot of code violations appear right before your offers." Mercer's smile tightened. "The city has standards, Agent Vance. If elderly residents can't maintain their properties, perhaps it's time to let others revitalize these declining neighborhoods." Declining according to who? Reality. Mercer's polite mask slipped, revealing the contempt beneath. "Look at Gloria Bell, living alone in that fire trap, refusing reasonable offers out of misplaced sentiment. Sometimes people need to be pushed toward progress. The community's future matters more than one stubborn old woman's memories." Malcolm leaned forward. "And if they resist that push? Then the system corrects itself." Mercer glanced at Barlow. "One way or another, the holdouts learn to let go. No one can fight City Hall forever, Agent Vance. Not even federal employees with hero complexes." A text alert buzzed on Mercer's phone. His eyes widened slightly as he read it. Malcolm knew what it said. Gloria's lawyer calling to cancel the closing, revealing the trap. Mercer's face hardened. "You set this up, like you set up the garage attack?" Malcolm asked quietly. "Or Gloria's house fire?" "Barlow!" Mercer snapped, shoving back from the table. The officer moved with explosive violence, swinging his baton at Malcolm's head. Malcolm rolled with the strike, letting it graze his shoulder as he created space. Barlow pursued with wild aggression, all pretense of procedure abandoned. "Not so calm now, are you?" Barlow snarled, launching a flurry of strikes. "No witnesses this time." Malcolm deflected the baton with his forearm, absorbing the impact rather than letting it break bone. He recognized Barlow's pattern, the same escalating fury that had made him kick Titan. The officer fought to dominate, not win. They crashed through the conference room door into the hallway. Barlow swung the baton two-handed like a club. Malcolm trapped his arm mid-strike and twisted, using the officer's momentum to slam him into the wall. The baton clattered away. Barlow reached for his concealed pistol. Malcolm drove a knee into his solar plexus and grabbed his gun hand, pinning it against the officer's back as they grappled. Like kicking helpless dogs, Barlow? Try someone who fights back. Meanwhile, Mercer had snatched a briefcase of documents and bolted toward the emergency stairs. Malcolm heard the stairwell door slam, followed by a sharp command through his earpiece. "Release Titan!" The German shepherd's disciplined bark echoed up the stairwell. Mercer's panicked footsteps stuttered to a halt. Malcolm locked Barlow in a control hold as federal agents swarmed the floor, weapons drawn. Through the window, he glimpsed tactical teams surrounding Sergeant Creel's unmarked car where she'd been monitoring police channels. "Wade Barlow, you're under arrest," announced Agent Torres, taking custody of the struggling officer. Federal charges including civil rights violations, conspiracy, and assault on a federal agent. Down in the stairwell, Titan had Mercer cornered against the wall, holding him there with unwavering focus, but not attacking. The developer's briefcase lay open, scattered documents revealing the web of shell companies, payoffs, and targeted harassment. "Call off the dog," Mercer pleaded as agents approached. "Titan, hold!" Malcolm commanded. The German shepherd maintained his position, proving once again that discipline mattered more than aggression. Agent Rivera secured Mercer while others collected evidence. Outside, more tactical teams executed simultaneous warrants across the city. Creel's office, shell company locations, corrupt inspectors' homes. The machine wasn't just dented now. It was being dismantled piece by piece. Malcolm watched Barlow and Mercer being led away in handcuffs, their expressions of smug superiority replaced by stunned disbelief. The same men who had terrorized elderly homeowners, who had hurt Titan and threatened Malcolm's family, were finally facing consequences in full public view. The arrest footage hit social media before the handcuffs came off. By Wednesday afternoon, every local station had helicopter coverage of federal agents leading Mercer, Barlow, and Creel past news cameras. The perp walk played on repeat in the corner store where Malcolm bought coffee, in Naomi's clinic waiting room, and on phones all across the waterfront district. "Look at this," Naomi said, showing Malcolm her tablet. Andre's recovered harbor footage played in crisp detail. Titan sitting calmly at heel, Barlow advancing aggressively, the contrast destroying any claim of a threatening dog. Below it, Dr. Morris's veterinary report detailed Titan's injuries, proving the kick was an attack, not defense. "They're calling it displacement for dollars," Evelyn remarked, reading headlines off her phone. Federal investigation reveals systematic targeting of elderly homeowners. Police sergeant coordinated harassment campaigns. Developer used shell companies to hide forced sales. Malcolm watched the coverage spread while helping Gloria sort through salvaged photos at Evelyn's house. Every hour brought new revelations. City council members scrambled to distance themselves from Mercer. Police brass launched internal reviews. Reporters dug into similar cases across the region. "Your supervisor's on TV," Gloria called from the living room. FBI Assistant Director Phillips appeared at a press conference formally acknowledging Malcolm's role. Agent Vance showed exceptional restraint in a volatile situation. His disciplined response prevented escalation while gathering evidence of broader criminal conduct. The Bureau commends his protection of vulnerable citizens against abuse of authority. By evening, support flooded in. A legal aid group offered to represent displaced residents. Housing advocates established an emergency fund for repairs and temporary shelter. The city expedited permits for Gloria's rebuild, while a contractor volunteered labor costs. "The whole neighborhood's talking," Naomi said over dinner. "People who were afraid to speak up are coming forward now. They're organizing block watches, sharing security cameras, helping the elders document everything." Malcolm nodded. Fear isolates. Community protects. Through the window, he saw neighbors gathered on porches, talking openly for the first time in months. Children played without parents, anxiously watching for patrol cars. Even Titan sensed the change, relaxing his guard stance as familiar faces passed. The next few days brought more victories. The health board cleared Naomi's clinic of all complaints and approved her grant application for expanded senior services. Malcolm's internal affairs review closed with full reinstatement and commendation. Gloria moved into temporary housing arranged by her church, while contractors assessed her home. By Saturday, the mood had transformed. What began as a community fundraiser for Gloria's rebuild became a celebration of resistance. Tables lined Evelyn's block, loaded with food and surrounded by 3 generations of residents. Children darted between chairs, while elders shared stories of standing their ground. "Never thought I'd see this again," Gloria said, watching from Evelyn's porch. "People unafraid to gather, to laugh out loud." Malcolm stood with his mother and sister as the Neighborhood Association president announced the rebuild fund had exceeded its goal. Applause erupted. Someone started playing music. More neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the sound of joy instead of sirens. "Look," Naomi pointed toward the lawn. Titan lay in the grass, surrounded by kids who no longer saw him as dangerous. One little girl carefully offered him a treat, using the proper hand position Malcolm had taught her. The German Shepherd took it gently, then returned to his watchful but relaxed pose. "The Neighborhood Protection Program," Evelyn chuckled. 4 legs and infinite patience. A local reporter covered the gathering, interviewing residents about resilience and recovery. The story would run alongside updates on the federal case, a powerful contrast between community strength and corrupt power. "Remember how quiet these streets were last week?" Gloria asked. "Everyone watching over their shoulder, jumping at sudden noises?" Malcolm nodded. The fear had been tactical, deliberately created to isolate and pressure people into selling. But it had backfired. Instead of breaking under pressure, the neighborhood had found its voice. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across rebuilt fences and fresh paint. Neighbors shared plates of food, traded phone numbers, planned support networks. What Mercer and his allies had tried to destroy, they had ultimately strengthened. "You did this," Evelyn said quietly to Malcolm. He shook his head. "The neighborhood did this. I just helped remove the obstacles." "Sometimes that's what people need most," Naomi added. "Someone to show them they're not alone against the machine." They watched the sun sink toward the harbor, painting the sky in fierce oranges and purples. Children continued playing while parents talked on porches. Titan dozed contentedly, finally able to relax his guard. The air filled with conversation, laughter, and music. Sounds of a community breathing freely again. Malcolm stood with his family, seeing not just what they had protected, but what they had helped rebuild. The streets belonged to the residents again, not to predators with badges and briefcases. Fear had been replaced by something stronger, collective pride and shared purpose. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have hand-picked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.